Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the Sportsballers podcast. I'm Evan Ash, joined as always by Corey Puffett and Eric Meyer. Today on the show, we've got some mailbag questions. We got some baseball stuff that happened. I forgot to write the college football in here. It's a mess.
And so, Evan, we're live.
Yes, and we're live.
So if you're listening to us right now, drop a comment down below and let us know you're watching. Let us know what you're thinking. You can ask us questions during the show. I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on those so that we can answer them, in addition to the mailbag questions we've already received from some other listeners of the show.
And Eric is eating his dinner.
That's normal.
What do you have for dinner, Eric?
I got a nice chicken breast, some rice pilaf, and a little clump of peas here that I'm enjoying, along with an ice cold Pepsi. I know you'll enjoy that, Evan. You're a big Pepsi guy, even though you live in Coketown.
That must be pretty
better than a nice cold Pepsi.
Must be really tedious to peel off rice.
Oh dear. Yeah.
Eric's giving me a look.
I'm giving more than a look.
Oh. Corey is number one in Eric's heart. So, let's see. I guess some big stuff happened in the NBA. So let's just start right there.
Yeah.
Let's see. The Wizards traded for Russell Westbrook. So good luck saying Washington Wizards Russell Westbrook. Announcers out there. So Sean asks, how much does this improve the team, and will it help bring in similar caliber players in the future? I don't think it improves the team at all, to be honest. I feel like this is kind of a lateral move. You just have a guy who's paid a lot of money and sort of scrambles around the court like his hair is on fire, and then jacks up a brick at the end of the shot clock. So you just exchange those two guys. John Wall is much more injured than Westbrook is, and the Wizards also traded away a first-round pick in 2023, because that's soon. So, there's a lot of big-name people and people who are getting paid a lot of money trading places, but this doesn't really move the needle for me. So, Eric, feel free to tell me how incredibly wrong I am about this opinion.
You're not that wrong. I don't think this was a huge deal for the Wizards. I think that Westbrook's probably a better player than John Wall is at this point in their careers. We don't really know what John Wall is at this point, coming off of the Achilles injury. He hasn't played basketball
in 2 years.
Yeah, it's been 2 seasons. And we saw at the end of last year, pre-bubble Russell Westbrook, he looked pretty good. He was able to contribute to the Rockets down the stretch. Now, in the bubble, things changed, as they tend to do when the games get tighter and you get into the playoffs. But the Wizards aren't really a team that are expecting to go deep into the playoffs anyway. This moderately improves their chances of maybe sneaking into, one of the last seeds. I'm not expecting them to make a deep run or even win a series. I'd say it's probably 50-50 that they even make the postseason. So short term, this is a marginal improvement. Long term, this does nothing. They're not in any better shape. Russell Westbrook isn't going to help them draw teammates because we've seen Russell Westbrook chase teammates away. We watched Kevin Durant leave Russell Westbrook. We watched Paul George leave Russell Westbrook. And we watched James Harden insist on either he leaves or Russell Westbrook leaves, or they might end up both leaving Houston. So I would not look at this as this is not a cornerstone moment for the Wizards to become some type of relevant franchise. They're still going to be what they've always been. And I don't know how well the fit is with Bradley Beal. I think Beal's better than both John Wall and Russell Westbrook at this point in his career. Westbrook's on the downside of his career. He's getting paid a lot of money, far too much money for a 32-year-old point guard that relies entirely on his athleticism, which is inevitably going to decline. His shot has gotten worse and worse. There was a time where he had a reliable mid-range shot. Those days are far gone at this point. You can't even count on him to hit anything outside 15 feet. So he's not going to help in that regard. And his defense is poor, always has been, despite the fact that he's such a good athlete and that he, quote-unquote, plays hard. Well, it takes a little more than playing hard to be a good defender. You have to be attentive, and he lacked that attention to detail. That's actually something that John Wall had when Wall was healthy. Unfortunately, I think his defense is going to deteriorate as well without the quickness that he needs because of the Achilles injury. So, like I said, lateral move at best. They gave up a first-round pick as well, but that pick's probably not going to convey until 2025. The Wizards have so many protections on it at this point that they're almost certainly not going to be picking outside of the top 10 for a long time. So until maybe 2025, when you figured they would have maybe turned the corner, at that point, that's when that pick might actually come through for the Rockets. So we're talking years and years down the road. It's not even that valuable because it's supposed to be for 2023, which is expected to be the year that the NBA decides to start letting high school kids in again, which means the draft pool is going to be enormous because you're going to have all the one and dones plus the latest crop of high school kids. But I don't think that pick's going to convey that first year because there's just so many protections on it for the Wizards. And they would basically require them to be a top 8 team in the league at that point, and that's not going to happen.
Oh, no. And I think the worst thing you said is the Wizards have a 50-50 chance to make the playoffs in a league where more than half the teams go to the playoffs.
Yeah, it speaks to how big of a non-factor Russell Westbrook can be at this point in his career. I mean, this Wizards team has nobody that can play any defense. Bradley Beal probably has the most potential at his position on defense, but he wasn't motivated to defend last year because the team was so horrible. And Russell Westbrook isn't going to add to that. Like I said, he's not a valuable defender. He's a net negative on that side of the ball. Like this team could score 115 points per game, but they're probably going to give up close to that amount. So I'd be surprised if they're anything but average. And at this point, usually average is good enough to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, but the East has gotten a little bit tougher. I mean, it's not great, still not as good as the West, but there are probably enough teams that could finish at or above 500 that'll fill out the top 8 seeds. So it's a question on whether or not the Wizards will be one of those, and even if they are, whether or not it'll be enough.
And there likely won't be. They won't get invited to the bubble again.
Hopefully, we won't have another bubble. Let's just leave that behind.
Yeah. Let's see. What about LeBron and Anthony Davis? Tell us about them.
Well, they got paid. Anthony Davis signed his Supermax contract. There was some speculation that he might sign what they call a 1-and-1, which is basically a 1-year deal with a player option. There's some murmurs going on that they might use that short-term deal as a way to manipulate salary cap in order to maybe try to persuade Giannis Antetokounmpo to join the Lakers after the 2021 season. That's obviously not going to happen now because Anthony Davis got paid. So he's a young superstar in his prime. This makes sense for the Lakers. He's going to be the guy when LeBron ages out and is no longer playing. He's going to be the face of the Lakers when that day comes. So it makes sense to get him paid. And that's going to be how that's going to go for them. And they also gave LeBron an extension. This shows that LeBron has been cold-blooded his entire career with where he plays. He doesn't care about loyalty. That's been clear. He cares about what the next best opportunity is. And so the fact that he was willing to sign an extension under his own volition speaks to how confident he is with the organization. So the Lakers, like I said, they're the prohibitive favorites to win the title again this year. And this just reinforces that these guys are all in with LA. They're probably going to be a threat for at least another couple of years, depending on how long LeBron can go. Most people would have figured he would have been on the decline at this point anyway, but he's proven everybody wrong. So who knows how long he's going to be continuing to be an elite player. But for now, he's still there. So that makes the Lakers the favorite to win the title.
Yeah. So Sean asked, what are the chances they win back-to-back championships? I think the chances are pretty good. They have the best team again.
Yeah, like I said a couple of weeks ago, I would say it's even money between them and the field, and that's a pretty bold statement with a league with 30 teams. Yeah, you typically don't see a singular favorite like that unless it's a team like Golden State where they have 4 Hall of Famers, or the 90s Bulls and teams like that, where it's like, okay, that team's going to go win the title. This team isn't quite there, but they're as close as they could realistically get, given the fact that they've only got 2 All-Stars on their team.
Okay. Is that it for basketball? Well, there's a college basketball question from Sean. What are your expectations for Maryland basketball this year? Did you see them making an NCAA tournament run, or is it too early to tell? I will start off first. I'm a Georgia Tech graduate and fan. We haven't been to the NCAA tournament since 2010. So yeah, that's going. So all this, well, maybe we'll make the tournament. Like that would be great to maybe make the tournament. So all this complaining and fire turgid and stuff, it doesn't really resonate with me. I guess I feel like a lot of whining from a spoiled fan base. Team
That's
that
what
goes
happens.
to the tournament.
That's what happens when you have expectations from your basketball program. We don't have a good football program. We haven't won a football championship since 1953. So that's clearly not what we do. So we got to win in basketball, and we haven't done that lately. But as for this season, this team is young. There's a lot of new players, new faces. They lost their two best players from last season, Anthony Cowan graduating and with Jalen Smith going into the NBA. It's tough to say whether or not this team can put together a tournament run. They've still got some good talent on the squad. And from what we've seen the first couple of games, of course, those are cupcake games, so it's hard to really draw a whole lot of conclusions from them. But there seems to be a step-up factor with some of the guys that were disappointing last year, namely Eric Ayala and Aaron Wiggins. They seem to have at least a little bit of confidence coming into this season to be able to reliably score the basketball. We'll see what happens when they actually start playing real competition. But the fact that they're at least hitting open shots, which is something that they struggled with a lot last year, if they're able to do that, then this team might be able to do something. But I worry about their defense. They don't really have a reliable big man like they had with Jalen Smith. He was a phenomenal defensive presence for them last year. They're relying on Galen Smith, who sounds almost like the fake Jalen Smith, like he's got a mustache and a pair of goofy glasses on. But he's a senior transfer. I'd be surprised if he could be as effective as Jalen Smith was. Jalen Smith was probably the best big man in the Big Ten last year. I don't see that happening with Galen Smith. As for the rest of the team, a lot of youth, a lot of people that, from what I've seen, still learning how to play the game. We've seen some bad defensive sequences. We've seen some stupid fouls, all the works of a young team. And I don't think this young team is all that talented. It's not like a Kentucky team that's loaded with NBA prospects. So a tournament run might be a little optimistic this year, I think, especially with how good the Big Ten is. I think they've got 6 or 7 teams ranked in the top 25, and Maryland is not among them. And I'd be surprised if they ever get there this year. Bubble team at best, probably an NIT team.
Must be nice. All right, let's see. On to baseball, where there's never any good news out of here because Major League Baseball doesn't like fun or happiness or puppies or anything. So the Staten Island Yankees announced today that they are ceasing operations after they found out that they are no longer a Yankees affiliate. And they literally found out because I believe it was Brian Cashman was. Can't hear you, Corey.
The Yankees still have not told them directly.
Yeah, because Brian Cashman, I think was him, was reading that he was reading down their rearranged affiliate list, and the Staten Island Yankees just weren't on the list he read out, and that's all that happened. So the Staten Island Yankees are suing the regular Yankees and Major League Baseball.
Yep.
Good for them, because this is just a shame. Like, what is the purpose of making this move, right? Like, who does this help? This isn't good for baseball as a whole. And this is an audio only medium, but in our show notes I copied and pasted a picture of the view from the Staten Island Yankees stadium. It is spectacular, and I don't know who's going to play there. So, it's a shame, really. It's horrible what baseball is doing just to save, a couple pennies, really. Like, why are y'all doing this? What is the purpose of just getting rid of minor league teams? So.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had an answer for you. But it just, it's bizarre. Like, you need the farm system to develop prospects. What benefit does this serve obviously this hurts the Staten Island Yankees because minor league teams they rely very heavily on the affiliation with a major league ball club in order to in order to bring in any sort of revenue, in order to pay player salaries, coach salaries. I mean, with no affiliation to a major league club, if they were to try and field a team, they would not have the money to pay salaries for actual prospects. They would be fielding a JV baseball team.
Well, I mean, yeah, like what type of baseball team can you field if you're not a minor league affiliate, right? Like
basically just a bunch. I mean, basically an intramural team of a bunch of people who just want to play baseball, and there are places for that. Minor league baseball is not one of them.
It's called Central Park, right?
Sure, yeah.
They have backstops over there.
So it doesn't make a whole lot of. Obviously, it hurts the minor league team, but it also doesn't make much sense from the major league club standpoint. You rely on these teams to develop your young talent. If you don't have minor league affiliated clubs, then your young players who are not on your major league roster don't have a place to play.
Well,
So
I mean, they're not getting rid of all of the minor leagues.
They're not getting rid of all of them, but they're getting rid of enough that it's going to lessen the number of players that you have in your system.
Mm-hmm.
And baseball is one of those sports that is very difficult to scout. We see enough trouble scouting in sports that don't have the same issue like the NFL, where we still find, guys who don't get drafted and end up, blossoming into really good players, even if it's only for a year. You look at James Robinson this year. The jury's still out on how what his longevity is going to be in the NFL, but he's had a really good season so far despite being undrafted. Tony Romo was undrafted and had a fantastic career. You see these kinds of guys all the time. Baseball, it seems to be even more hit or miss. Guys who you think are going to be the number of number one overall draft picks who we've never even heard of because they just never made it to the major leagues is ridiculous. And yet you have guys who are drafted in the 27th round making it to the to the show.
Albert Pujols was drafted in the 40th round.
My point exactly. So you never know which of these guys are going to actually turn into something. And so you want to have as many of these guys in your system as possible, because the guy who you think is going to be somebody might not end up being anybody. And the guy who you think is, just wasting a roster spot on your lowest level farm system club might end up making it to the show one day and be a really good player.
Yeah, I mean, it's about finding the diamond in the rough.
If there's no rough, then how are you?
Less rough.
Yeah, if there's no rough, where are you going to find the diamons?
I don't know.
So that was my very long-winded way of saying what you just summed up in 10 words.
I'm happy to help. I really wanted to go to a Staten Island Yankees game. Like the stadium is right by the Staten Island Ferry. So
I doubt that it looks that pretty all the time. I wish I'm going to see if I can get this image up on our feed. I don't know if I can do that or not, but I'm going to try.
Okay. Well, I got this picture from I believe at Baseball Brit on Twitter. So if we need to give credit to somebody, that's where I got it from. I don't know if he took it himself or got it from somebody else. But yeah, I really wanted to go to a Staten Island Yankees game, and this is disappointing and foolish. Also on the list of disappointing, the Orioles, who really insist on being described that way, although they exceeded expectations this past season. The Orioles have traded Jose Iglesias to the Angels for some minor leaguers. I never heard of the minor leaguers. I didn't put them in our notes. But Jose Iglesias was a really fun player to watch this season. Tremendous defender at shortstop. And he had a great hitting season as well. He didn't really hit for much power, but lots of singles, lots of getting on base. He struggled with some injury a little bit, hamstring. But he was a great guy to have on your team, and I'm just sad to see him go.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough couple of years with seeing stuff like that because we watched the Orioles, like you said, be better than expected, and Jose Iglesias was a big part of the reason that was the case, and now he's gone, so it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. But we also understand we're still in a rebuild. This team could have easily, if they had played a full 162, could have still lost 110 games, even if they had a good 60-game stretch, or at least a better than expected 60-game stretch. We know this team still was not that good. So getting attached to people at this point is probably a fool's errand, but it still doesn't change the fact that you watch the guy play well and now he's not with your team anymore. But I guess it is what it is. We talked about this a little bit about grading how Mike Elias has done so far since he took over the GM duties with the Orioles, and we were both in agreement that he's done a good job. And this is one of the moves that he made where I might not like it, but it's also not going to affect the long-term plan. So how upset can I really get?
Yeah, apparently the guys we've got are pitchers who are supposed to be good. So we will see what happens. The Orioles also didn't offer a contract to Hanser Alberto. He's a guy who also couldn't hit for any power, hit for a lot of singles, and got on base. He also never walked. So he really only hit singles. And he hit left-handed pitchers exceptionally well. But that's about it. He wasn't a great defender, but he was a fun guy to have on your team as well. Guy with a big smile. Looked like he was just having a great time on the baseball field. Orioles also got rid of Renato Nunez, who also could only do one thing. He only hit for power. That's all he did, and that was it was kind of streaky. He would hit a nice 3-run home run against the Yankees every once in a while, and that was really about it. He had a wooden glove out in the field. You don't want any part of that. Kicking the ball all over the place. So, I'm kind of sad to see him go too, but like Eric just said, you can't really get attached to people in this phase of the rebuild. It's going to be a bit of a revolving door at the major league level for another year or two, and we'll see what happens. Also in Major League Baseball and the Players Association still haven't come to an agreement on whether there's going to be a designated hitter or not. I don't know what they're waiting for. I think they just like disagreeing with each other. That's really the stage we're in. They're just oil and water. Like they don't mix at all, but they deserve each other, frankly. That neither one seems to be negotiating in good faith. They're just trying to get over on the other one, particularly the owners. They're like, oh, we really screwed the players this time. That really seems to be all the owners want to do. Like, they just want to make money. Go run a hedge fund or something if you just want to make money. Like, if you own a baseball team, it seems like you should like the baseball. And the decisions they keep making seem like they just want to have less baseball instead of more, which is odd when you own a baseball team.
How much complaining did you hear during the shortened season beyond opening day about the designated hitter being in the National League?
Zero.
It was none. There was nobody complained at all because these traditionalists that love the pitcher hitting realized it was pretty clear right in front of them.
No, they didn't realize it. They knew it years ago.
Okay, but they pretended they didn't know, but they couldn't pretend anymore. Having a designated hitter in the lineup is superior to having a pitcher hit. And that was abundantly clear this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, when Clayton Kershaw was pitching in the World Series, was anybody like, oh, man, I wish he could take a couple of bats, a little roller to the second baseman and a failed bunt attempt. It's just thrilling television. Oh my goodness. So, it's a clown show and they insist on it being that way. So that's what we get. Um, want to mention Georgia Tech football got a big win against Duke this past weekend. Uh, so, Duke's terrible, Georgia Tech's terrible, but we beat them. So I'm happy about that. Let's see. So that is it for all of the non NFL. So let's just jump right into the National Football League. We'll start with Drew's questions here, because they're right in front of me. What are y'all's thoughts on the NFC East? I predict Washington wins the division. We have 3 tough games ahead of us, but the Giants need to beat the Seahawks, Cardinals, Browns, and Ravens. I like Alex Smith, and I think Washington has a good chance of winning the division. Okay, it's a little redundant there, but
Whoops.
like the Giants were a mess with Daniel Jones. They'll be, I guess, slightly more of a mess without him. And Washington plays some good defense. Their offense is terrible, but they play some good defense. And, it's the NFC East. You don't have to be good. You just have to be the least awful. So I think Washington, they might not even have to win any more games to win this division. Well, no, they have to win one more game. So 5-11, not too good, but might be enough to finish in first place. What do y'all think?
It's pretty tough because neither one of these teams between the Giants and the team have a whole lot of easy games, in my opinion, on the schedule. Not that anybody would be easy for teams this bad, but there's not a single game on the team's schedule where I'd say, oh yeah, they're going to win that one. Like, I think they should beat the Eagles, and I think they could beat the Panthers, but I'm not confident in either. I'm not confident that they're going to beat the 49ers. They've shown that despite their injury situation that they can be scrappy. They're definitely not beating the Steelers on Monday afternoon or Monday evening or whatever you want to call that.
Monday twilight.
And I mean, Washington should have beaten the Giants twice, and they didn't beat them either time. So, once again, you can't count on any of these games being a win for them.
Yeah, so it's just a mess. I mean, I think that the Giants, even without Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones might be back in time for them against the Cowboys in Week 17. They'll probably beat the Cowboys because they're terrible. And frankly, that might be the key win they need to get over the hump. I'd probably still lean Giants at this point because I think there's enough of a window there. There's one more opportunity where I'd say, okay, they're going to win that game. And then I don't think any game like that exists for Washington. And the Eagles are just a hot mess. I can't even include them in the conversation. That they might lose the rest of their games.
So I know you can't read that, but your dad just commented, Carson Wentz for MVP changed my mind.
He sucks. Next question. I that's really all it is. Carson Wentz, he drops back, he looks around, and he holds on the ball and sacks himself. There you go.
Or throws a pick or fumbles or does all the wrong things. Yeah.
Or does all of it at the same time.
The whole Carson Wentz is a good quarterback thing, that's one of those beliefs that people have that if they have it, you can't argue against them because you can't meet them where they are. Like, you can't possibly meet somebody.
They're in fantasy land.
Right, exactly. They're in fantasy land. They are in a place that does not exist. There is no universe where Carson Wentz is a good quarterback. So if you think that, I'm sorry, but you're hopeless. There's nothing I can do or say that's going to convince you otherwise.
Well, it's one of those situations where people get attached to certain players, and so when they turn out to suck, they try to tell themselves they don't because they want to believe they're not.
Oh, and I get that completely. And there have absolutely been players that I have been like that with. There have also been players that I've been convinced they're going to suck, and it takes me a while to come around on them. But Carson Wentz has been bad for long enough now that you've had more than enough time to come to grips with reality.
And he's also been historically bad. It's not just, oh, he's played bad football. He's played horrendous football. This is some of the worst quarterbacking I've seen from a non-rookie in my 20 years now of watching football. I've never
pretty
seen
pathetic.
a fifth-year quarterback that's being paid like a starting quarterback in the NFL, and he's just out there sucking it up game after game.
It's been pathetic.
Yeah,
I feel bad for the guy. I really do.
I mean, I don't. He's getting paid a lot of money to be bad at his job.
Yeah. I mean, he is fortunate that there haven't been many fans at Eagles games this season because, Philly fans are known for being understanding and patient when it comes to bad
totally.
Oh, my goodness.
That's a thing that exists.
Yeah. Where were we? Roger Goodell should be ostracized for not having a bubble. The NFL schedule this year has been
effed.
Since Jump Street. Love Jump Street. What a phrase that is. But Goodell is apparently toying with the idea of having a bubble for the playoffs. Thoughts on this? There should be a bubble. There should definitely be a bubble. The less ways that COVID can get in, the less chances there
chaos.
are.
The
chaos.
problem is, what
your
does
practice squad playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers, for example?
My concern with this, and I agree with you, Evan. Ideally, there's a bubble situation for the NFL because we saw it with the NBA. A bubble protects the players. It keeps the virus from getting in. We didn't see any positive tests that I know of in the entire time that they had the bubble with the NBA, right?
Nope.
Meanwhile, with Major League Baseball, we saw a plethora of cases right off the bat, and eventually we just kind of stopped talking about it.
Well, Major League Baseball did turn it around.
They did turn it around. They did turn it around. It never completely went away, but they definitely started. They definitely made adjustments, and I get the desire for a bubble for the NFL because it would be nice in a perfect world to have that. How do you implement a bubble for the National Football League? In the NBA, they cut down the number of teams. First of all, they didn't have all 30 teams in Orlando at Disney for this. They had like maybe 20 to start, roughly. You also only have about 15 players per team, some coaches. You really don't need as much staff. There are not as many. There's not as many trainers and equipment managers and whatnot for the NBA as there are for the NFL. You don't need as much space for the NBA as for the NFL. We've all seen the pictures of the basketball court inside of Syracuse's stadium. It's ridiculous. It looks like a grain of rice in there. It does not take as many people to run the operations for a basketball season as it does for the NFL. And that's even taking into account the fact that the NFL plays less frequently. How do you do this? How do you have everybody in a small area and be able to play games within a certain vicinity on regulation football fields? How do you do that?
I mean, I don't know how, but like.
But that's why I say I take issue with the idea that Roger Goodell should be ostracized for this because I don't even know where to begin in trying to figure this out.
Yeah, I think Roger Goodell has done the best he can. I'm not blaming him.
I can't even think.
Slightest.
I have a hard time finding a way to address any one small part of how to create a bubble for the NFL, much less the larger scope of it. And if I can't even figure out one small piece, how am I going to get on Roger Goodell's case for not being able to figure out all of it?
I just feel like they should have. I mean, I understand it's hard, but these are the times we're in. If we really want to play football during a global pandemic, then we're going to have to make some sacrifices and make some tough decisions. So I feel like people should be at least a bit more isolated than they are. The people are going to say, well, the guys can't go home and see their family. Well, I mean, yeah, this is what happens when you try to play football during a pandemic. You can't go home and see your family. Like that's just the nature of this situation.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If that had been a stipulation going into it, these players would not have agreed to it.
Right. Yeah. So, that's the problem. Right? That's I mean, all this COVID that's breaking out with the Ravens and with other teams,
that's the risk. That's
frankly.
the risk that the players are taking by playing. Now,
there's COVID outbreaks in every line of work.
Yes.
It's everywhere.
Now, the NFL has put into place a lot of different things in order to try and control it, different protocols, different procedures to try and lessen that risk, to try and make sure that if anybody does get it, that it doesn't spread uncontrollably and it doesn't completely wipe out a team.
Imagine that.
But that's the risk you take.
I mean, at this point, we haven't had to cancel any games, and we're heading into week 13. So, I mean,
we've done pretty well. I don't think the schedule has been as effed as Andrew makes it out to be.
Yeah,
it's been rough. We've had some weird situations. We've had to make some contingency plans for fantasy football.
We've had Wednesday afternoon football.
Yeah.
But
what more do you want?
It's worked out okay. I mean, and if the NFL
we're one day away from having seen football on every single day of the week.
Yeah, if the NFL wants to do a bubble for the playoffs and they can figure out the logistics and getting it taken care of, more power to them. They need to do whatever they can to make sure that all 269 games are broadcast. That's what makes them their money. And so far, so good. And if that means that they want to reassure that the playoffs maintain some level of integrity by not having, like Evan said, practice squad units going out there in January for consequential elimination games, I would say that they should do everything in their power to make sure that happens. But it's ultimately up to them. If they think that they can pull this off, then they should pull it off.
Yeah. I mean, at this point with the pandemic, I really appreciate every football game that happens, because I mentioned Georgia Tech. We played last Saturday. We hadn't played since Halloween before that. Like there was just nothing. We had no games. So and like we lived through the first half of the summer when there was no games in any sport at all. So I'm glad they're playing. I enjoy watching the games, but it's still a pandemic. It's a very serious situation. And I would obviously prefer that there were no pandemic, but you can ask the orange guy about that one. Let's see, what else? Speaking of orange things, the Denver Broncos had a bit of a quarterbacking situation. They didn't have one, so
that's a situation, all right.
Yeah, all four of their quarterbacks were on the COVID list, so they had to. Who did they start?
They started Kendall
Hinton or something.
Kendall Hinton.
Okay, yeah, you started him in fantasy this week.
I did. I still won. I still led the league in scoring with him in my lineup, and he did nothing.
Got negative.
I led the league in scoring with him doing terrible, and with both of my starting defenses doing terrible.
Yeah,
I still scored 178 points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, Tyreek Hill.
Despite being terrible. So, yeah.
And
John
is
asking, should the NFL look into an emergency quarterback, similar to how hockey does with emergency goalies?
How would that even work? Like, see, here's the thing. Goalie, you strap on a bunch of pads, you sit yourself in front of the net, and you just do your best, right? You're covering a fairly small area, and yes, you're playing against professional hockey players who are very good at locating where the puck needs to go and actually getting it there in a way that I never could hope to do. But you're there to take up space. That's really what you're there to do as a goalie. When you're talking about
hold on. That seems very disrespectful to what goalies do. They do not just take up space.
As an emergency goalie. As an emergency goalie, you are there to just do your best to cover this small, finite amount of space
Then
as
why haven't
best
they
as you
called me
can.
if all I do is stand there?
You said what?
Why haven't they called me if all I do is stand there? I can do that. And I would command a lower salary than whoever they put in there.
They put the Zamboni driver in there.
Yeah,
for hockey.
but that's what the emergency goalie is. It's somebody who's just at the stadium who works there. They're an usher or they're a Zamboni driver or something along those lines.
I have a car.
You could be a Zamboni driver. If you go and you become a Zamboni driver for whatever team is down there in the South, then you could be the emergency goalie. And you'll probably do about as well as most of those emergency goalies do. Now, granted, a lot of them, they have some experience playing goalie at some level, whether it's rec league, whether it's college or high school, whatever. They have some experience. That's part of how they got a job at the ice rink.
Would it be easier to wear shoes playing goalie rather than skates? Because I can't ice skate.
No,
you gotta have skates on. Okay, but let's be
regardless.
honest.
The point is, quarterbacking is a completely different animal.
Quarterbacking involves playing tackle football, which means if you're a scrawny nobody out there and you get injured, the insurance that comes with that type of risk goes through the roof. Okay, the NFL wants no part of having to protect average Joes out there that get thrown onto a football field because all the other quarterbacks are hurt or sick or were exposed to a global pandemic. That's just not a realistic scenario. Like, you can play goalie and get through a game probably without sustaining injury. If you put me on a field and said, "Hey, you're going to play quarterback," and I get hit once, I'd be laid up.
Aaron Donald's on the other side.
Yeah, I'd be done for the rest of the month. Don't call me. Don't text me. Just stick my ass in the hospital, and that'll be that for me. Hockey, being a goalie, you're probably not going to come away with that. Whereas with football, it's not only possible, it's inevitable that you're going to get hurt.
If Aaron Donald jumped on my back, I would need to have both of my legs amputated. I don't know how Alex Smith managed to support his weight.
I would be in the hospital so long they'd name the hospital after me. Yeah, like, this is the Evan Hospital. Yeah, because he's been here for 1,000 years. Played in NFL for a game. Like, Drew Brees has 11 broken ribs and a punctured lung.
You mean to tell me that I'm supposed to be more durable than Drew Brees? I don't think so.
Yeah, I didn't know people had 11 ribs. I thought there were just 10.
No, they have
apparently
12.
there are 24.
Oh, there are 24?
Yeah, 24 ribs.
So he has 13 healthy ribs. So I guess he's doing pretty good. I'm not signing up to play that sport. The idea of the emergency quarterback was kind of floated out there. I want to say Bruce Arians mentioned it. Like, they have a quarterback who's just in quarantine for the whole season, like locked away somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit of a different situation. You assume if that's somebody who actually has some NFL experience,
But the Broncos could have used a guy like that. But instead, apparently the Broncos QBs were having a meeting or something in person with no masks. One guy tested positive, and they all got exposed.
I just felt bad for Kendall Hinton because here's a guy who he's a practice squad wide receiver. Mm-hmm. And he's out there trying to be RG3 or Lamar Jackson or whatever. He's trying to be the guy who runs an option offense, who scrambles and stuff. But he's not even athletic enough to be a starting wide receiver in the NFL, to be an active wide receiver in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And he's out there trying to run around. It was a completely hopeless situation to throw him into. I'm proud of him for only throwing 2 interceptions in the game. He threw like 9 passes.
He completed 1 pass.
He completed a pass, but he threw like 9 passes, and 5 of his incompletions were not, or 6 of his incompletions were not intercepted. I'll give him credit for that.
Yeah, and plus the fact that he was compensated pretty well to play that football game, especially given what he was making as a practice squad wide receiver. He got a significant pay bump to go out there and just get destroyed.
I mean, good for him, right? Good for the old bank account. as long as the check's still cash, right? Let's see, where else? Are the
Andrew's last
Buccaneers who
question.
we thought they were? For a team with a lot of star power, they are pretty mediocre. They do look kind of. I don't really understand what their problem is.
Their
Right?
defense.
Do you have enough Hall of Famers on your team or not?
Their defense has struggled, especially ever since
Derek
Vita
Brooks
Vea
isn't
got
walking
hurt.
through that door.
What's that?
Derek Brooks and Warren Sapp and Rondé Barber aren't walking through the door.
No, they're not. Vita Vea got hurt earlier this season. Ever since then, the Bucs defense has just kind of been in a steady decline. Their offense, I don't really know what to make of it, because for the past few weeks, the big thing has just been their incompetency in using the running back position.
Yeah, because they use
Fournette way more than he deserves to be used, and they do a terrible job. They throw so many checkdowns, and yet they suck on those plays. They're throwing checkdowns in situations where the running back is closely covered, is behind the line of scrimmage. Brady is throwing inaccurate passes to those checkdown receivers. It's just it's been a myriad of issues on those sorts of plays. And then as far as the wide receivers, I just can't really make heads or tails out of what's going on. They're not consistent.
Well, I mean, to borrow a quote from John McKay when asked about his team's execution, he said he was in favor of it. So, the issue with the Buccaneers is they can't execute. Tom Brady, I don't know where you're throwing the ball at half the time. What are you doing? You throw a rocket ball to the guy right in front of you who can't catch anyway. Him and Mike Evans can't seem to get on the same page.
Unless they're within 2 yards of the end zone.
Yes, and Mike Evans is going up against my fantasy team. Then they're just rocking and rolling. But other than that, they can't do anything right. I feel like this lands on Bruce Arians. I feel like, when the whole is less than the sum of the parts, like this seems to land on the coach to me for not being able to get it to work. Right? Like, you have Tom Brady who's won 6 Super Bowls. I'd like to think he knows what he's doing. Right? And then you bring in Rob Gronkowski out of cold storage. You bring in Antonio Brown out of wherever he was, somewhere. These are great players. Why aren't you winning more games? How do you lose to the Chicago Bears, who can't do anything right? Like this is just inexcusable to me.
I just want to point out real quick that going into their bye week this week, Rob Gronkowski is currently the tight end 8 for fantasy football.
Okay, yeah.
Are you trying to make a point?
Yeah, I had him at 6, and you guys call me crazy.
Yeah, he hasn't even had his bye week yet, and he's only at 8, so you're still crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he looked like a guy who'd been sitting on his couch for 2 years.
Well, he doesn't anymore, though. Season. He's been looking really good lately.
He's looked all right.
He's back on the couch this week, so that'll help your fantasy team so much.
Yeah. So a couple of things about the Bucs. For one thing, I think we all picked them to be a wild card team in the preseason.
I think that's right.
I think we all 3 of us picked the Saints to win the South, and the Bucs are probably one of our top wild card teams. That's still what they are. So it's not like our preseason predictions are off here. I think what happened was we saw them drub the Packers, and we saw them crush the Raiders in back-to-back weeks, and we thought, oh, this team looks like they should win the NFC. And we probably got a little out ahead of ourselves thinking that, and probably the rest of the football-watching world did. And the last 4 weeks or so have been humbling for them. I mean, they got crushed by the Saints. They lost a tough game to the Rams, who are pretty good. They got boat raced early by the Chiefs, but they came back and made it interesting, at least at the end. I think this is still a pretty good football team. It's just it feels like what we've seen as far as their potential maybe against Green Bay and some of the things they've done against some of the mid-tier teams in the NFL, that it looked like a team that was going to be a Super Bowl contender. And maybe they're just not quite that right now, and maybe they won't be. But another note that I have, Scotty Miller through the first 8 weeks of the season was averaging 5.5 targets per game. On receptions and on his targets, his DVOA was around 20 through the first 8 weeks of the season. He has now had 5 targets in the last 4 games total. So that's his production has been cut down significantly.
Well,
who took his targets? Antonio Brown took his targets.
Right.
And what's Antonio Brown's DVOA? -15. So there seems to be an issue with who was getting the targets, who was very productive. I mean, Scotty Miller, we didn't know who the hell this guy was coming into the season. But of course, Brady found another little white guy to throw the ball to, despite the fact that he had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and O.J. Howard early in the season, and Rob Gronkowski and Cameron Brady. He's got all these dudes to throw the ball to, and he still manages to find a safety valve for like a 5'10" white guy. But that's what he was, and he was productive in that role. You take him off the field, Brady doesn't have that guy that he trusts in a jam, which seemed to be what Scotty Miller had become for him. Instead, he has Antonio Brown, who doesn't run the same type of routes, so you end up with Brady just getting rattled and throwing picks and doing things we're not accustomed to seeing Tom Brady doing. I'm not going to sit here and blame it on Antonio Brown because, honestly, I don't think he's done anything yet.
I think I know somebody on this podcast who will.
Well, Evan hates Antonio Brown, but you can't argue that he hasn't had a moment of poor behavior yet, as far as we know. I just don't think that, given the fact that you've already got 2 big play, big name receivers in Godwin and Evans, I don't think taking Miller off the field, who plays a different type of game, and replacing him with Antonio Brown, who plays more similarly to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, was the right move, and I think it's hurt their offense.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's an embarrassment of riches with them because they have, I guess, okay running backs if they decide to use the correct one. But like, there's only one football, so like you can't have Gronk and Mike Evans and Ronald Jones and Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown, like all of them on the field at the same time. That's too many people. So and Scotty Miller, right? He seemed to be the key to their success when they were the best team in the NFL for 15 minutes. Remember that? So, Bruce Arians and Byron Leftwich and was it Todd Bowles?
Yep.
He's the D coordinator. Y'all got to figure it out, right? Like this isn't necessarily a bad problem to have, that we have too many good players. Nobody ever complains about that. But y'all have to make it work.
I think that of all the teams to have a late bye week, this is probably the best team to have it, because this is a team that they threw together. They had no offseason together, which, nobody did. But when you've got new quarterback and things like that, now you've got 12 weeks of tape to say, okay, here's all the crap we suck at. They've got a solid sample of things that they can't do well, and they've got a bye week to figure it out. I think that will help them. I think the last 4 games of their schedule are pretty easy. I think they should win at least 3 out of those 4 games. They play the Falcons twice, the Lions, and the Vikings. They should definitely win 3 out of those 4, and maybe could win all 4, end up 10-6 or 11-5. They'll still be a wild card team. They might even win a playoff game. But let's be honest, this team is not, the Saints at this point. The Saints look better than the Bucs, even with a fake quarterback out there. I mean, Taysom Hill's not a real quarterback, and the Saints still look like they would beat the crap out of the Bucs at this time.
Yeah, I mean, the Buccaneers aren't they the 5 seed right now? They would, if things hold, they would go at Washington or at New York Giants.
I think the Rams are the 5 seed, so they probably have to play the 2 seed, or the 3 seed, which is obviously not as enviable of a matchup as playing the NFC least winner.
Yes. Let's move on to our takeaways from Week 12. Let's start with the Ravens. I guess because I'm hosting this week, and this was the most recent game. I'm so incredibly proud of this team that was just cobbled together from random guys from Mondawmin Mall and stuff. Like I've never heard of some of the guys who were playing yesterday. So yeah, we had some Wednesday afternoon football against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Ravens kept it close, surprisingly. The defense absolutely balled out, but the offense, it was clear that the second ever unanimous MVP in NFL history was not there. The offensive line was all injured and COVIDed up.
Your boy Hollywood Brown had a nice play.
Hollywood Brown did something.
First time all year.
I didn't think he was on the team anymore. Just vanished in the thin air. And all I keep hearing about is DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown, however they were drafted after Hollywood Brown. The Ringer Fantasy Football Show started calling Hollywood Brown Bakersfield Brown because he's just, he doesn't get to be Hollywood. He's Bakersfield Brown. That's, that's how bad he's been. So he showed up and he caught the ball once. He did kind of ole one of them, just kind of, I'm going to stick my arm out. So, politics incoming. I was reminded of Beto O'Rourke when he did when he lost the Senate race in 2018, how proud he was of his team that worked with him because, that had no business being close and they only barely lost. So that's how I felt about this Ravens team. Like we just got these guys, we're in a situation where we, on paper have no chance and we kept it close. But in the NFL, there's no moral victories. But still, I was encouraged by what I saw, and just add another chapter to the craziness of the Ravens Steelers rivalry. We have a game that's supposed to be Thanksgiving night, national TV. Let's just move it to Wednesday afternoon, and it can't be in prime time because of Christmas at Rockefeller Center.
Hey man, they were promoting Christmas at Rockefeller Center for like a week, so that couldn't get bumped.
The NFL schedule came out in April or May, maybe this year.
Yeah, but that game was supposed to be played last Thursday.
I mean, where is the tree going anywhere? They could have lighted it tonight.
They had Dolly Parton, man. You can't bump Dolly Parton.
You can bump Dolly Parton for football. Sunday Night Football is the most watched television program like 10 years in a row.
Yeah, well, NBC said, forget that. We're tired of kowtowing to the NFL. We're gonna stick with our tree lighting ceremony. So
they need to figure out where their bread is buttered.
Is the NFL going to leave NBC because of this? No, they're not. So I think they'll be okay.
Yeah. I mean, nobody who cashes the checks at NBC is complaining, I'm sure.
No.
So, what about the football team? I did what they rolled the Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day.
It feels like an eternity ago at this point.
Yeah. What is amazing to me is that was the most watched football game since the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And it was Washington and Dallas.
It's a Dallas game. A lot of people watch Dallas. A lot of people who have no football fanhood integrity are Dallas fans.
It's just interesting with the number of people in this country who claim that they're boycotting football.
Nah, man, it's Thanksgiving. You got to tune in for Thanksgiving games, man. It's especially this year where a lot of people didn't travel to be with family. You just sit down on the couch, you roll a joint, and you watch some football. That's what you do.
I don't know. I'm just saying, if so many people were boycotting, we wouldn't have gotten this. So, but regardless, the football team played well. Defense played really well. Granted, they're playing against Andy Dalton and not Dak Prescott, but it was Andy Dalton and not what was his name? Garrett something.
Garrett
Gilbert from the AF.
Yeah, from the AF. I was impressed with the defensive effort for the most part. The offense played pretty decently. I mean, Antonio Gibson is just a stud. The kid can flat out play. I continue to be as frustrated by Washington's lack of understanding of their running back situation as I am by the Bucs, because just like LeGarrette Blunt, just like Leonard Fournette does not belong on the field instead of Rojo, there is no reason why J.D. McKissick should be on the field instead of Antonio Gibson. It's absurd.
I mean, can we stop acting like Ronald Jones is good, though? Like, he's not that good.
Well, definitely stop acting
better than
like
Fournette.
Fournette is good.
It's better than
Leonard
Fournette.
Fournette's not good either, but I would say Antonio Gibson is significantly better than both of those guys. I would say Rojo at this point. I think he's a better between the tackles runner, but out of the passing game, not great, and he fumbles too much.
Gibson is still a rookie, so it's hard to say that he's definitely better than either of them, but he definitely looks that way right now.
When have we ever seen anything positive out of Ronald Jones until like this year, though? He was irrelevant in the NFL until Tom Brady came and joined the team.
You see players who have really good rookie years and then fizzle out at running back sometimes.
What about that guy from Florida? Was it P. Ryan or somebody else from Washington a few years ago, who just had a legendary fumble at the goal line that went out of the end zone?
Yeah, I think that's
happened a lot. Clinton Portis had a play like that once, so yeah, you're gonna have to be more specific.
This was since I graduated from college, so
there's still enough games for that to have happened more than once to Washington.
Oh, okay. But yeah, the football team looked good, and it's a good Thanksgiving when the Cowboys lose.
It's the second time that they crushed Dallas. That feels good. The Washington football team has never lost to the Dallas Cowboys. I like saying that.
That is quite something.
Yeah,
actually.
It's only the third time since like the 70s that Washington has swept Dallas in the regular season.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like if you look back at the history of this rivalry, and you look back at seasons where Dallas only won one game, it was always against Washington.
Oh my goodness.
Always against Washington.
Alrighty. Well, seems a little one-sided. Tyrod Taylor just declined to file a grievance against the Chargers and the team doctor who stabbed him back in week 2. Okay, I guess good for him. Tyrod Taylor has more forgiveness in his heart than I would, especially since there was a needle way too close to it.
This one is a head scratcher. How do you not file anything? Like the NFL is still investigating this situation. Like they're still looking into this, as they should. How? Because I don't even think that this is the first thing like this that has happened with that particular team doctor.
Oh.
So how do you not file a grievance? I don't understand Tyrod Taylor's decision on this one.
I don't either. This is odd to me. Like I said, he has more forgiveness in his heart than I do.
He has more forgiveness in his heart than he should, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Like that's one of those things that like you don't just let bygones be bygones. Like, and it's not even just because it's messed up that it happened to you. It's that this guy could potentially do something similar to somebody else in the future. And if there's no punishment for it, then there's no incentive to not do it again.
Like what about Justin Herbert, who's been lighting it up? If I were Justin Herbert's lung, I would be nervous too that there's a poke coming from an exceptionally stabby team doctor. Right? Like, bad stuff happens to the Chargers. That's just how it is. So, if I'm Justin Herbert, I'm looking over my shoulder a lot. This surprised me. Like, really? You're not going to file a grievance? This seems like a layup of a grievance to at least put something in. Pausing to look at Eric, who's got a mustache and a whipped cream mustache.
Yeah, 2 mustaches, baby. I think, I don't know. I'm not one to sit here and say Tyrod Taylor should sue somebody or should file a grievance. It's his decision. Mm-hmm. He certainly would have had grounds, I think. But, if he doesn't feel like it's worth the hassle, then that's okay. It's up to him. It makes sense that he would just want to put this behind him and move on. I don't blame him. Corey, get it together, dude.
You look so ridiculous right now.
Y'all aren't very good at maintaining your acting faces here, and you're letting the show down.
You maintain your face. How about that? Wipe whipped cream off of it.
I'm enjoying a nice cup of hot chocolate in my Spider-Man mug. You guys just can't handle it. That's your problem.
Moving on.
I just
Sticking with the same team.
Speaking of not being able to handle stuff, Anthony Lynn and the clock winding down has no idea what he's doing. He just starts looking around and the clock tick, 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 tick. As they have timeouts and they're not using him, he's looking around, he's waving, he's talking or something, and just wasting time. So, it's really not, the coolest thing to call for somebody to be fired, but this is one of the basic competencies you're supposed to have as a head coach in the NFL. You've demonstrated time and time again that you can't do it.
Yeah, I feel bad because I like Anthony Lynn. I really like Anthony Lynn. I really wanted him to be successful this year. I had a blast watching Hard Knocks this year and being able to see some of the behind the scenes stuff with him. He seems like he'd be a really good coach, but on Sunday that was just
ask his team about somebody asked his team about their coach's execution.
Wow. That was absolutely amazing. Now I'm not sure, everybody, I saw a lot of people on social media really getting on his case over the last play when the Chargers ran a QB sneak, but the linemen were all dropping into pass protection. I don't know what happened there. I have a hard time believing that was the coach's fault. I have to imagine that there was some miscommunications between the quarterback and the line.
Yeah.
But when you're coming off of a sequence that was as poorly managed and coached as that one was, I can kind of understand why everybody is giving Anthony Lynn a hard time about that instead of the rookie quarterback.
Well, the first rule of leadership is that it's always your fault.
Yeah, the buck stops with you.
You learned that from A Bug's Life back in the day. So, it's on him, right? You're the head coach, you're the head guy. You got to make sure that the people below you are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
There is never an
yourself make mistakes.
There's never an appropriate time for somebody who is in charge to say, "Oh, I don't know anything about that." That's that guy's problem.
Yeah, I mean when you start saying that stuff, you should also just hand in your resignation. Just go.
So now I haven't seen that happen with Anthony Lynn, but I also haven't seen him. I didn't see him address that last play at all, which I'd really like to hear what his take is on that, because that was.
And the Chargers don't need help figuring out how to lose games. Eric's saying something that distracted me. The Chargers don't need help figuring out how to lose games, right? They have the kicker who calls himself Money Badger to kick a game-winning kick inside, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna kick it over there instead," and then they lose. What else happened? They had they had a game-winning touchdown pass dropped for them, and they had a game-winning touchdown pass against them called an incomplete pass,
and
then went to review, and then it was ruled a touchdown. The Chargers lose both times. Eric's gone now?
Yeah, Eric just disappeared.
Okay.
It's okay. I accidentally disappeared for 5 seconds earlier, and so your mic went completely silent for about 5 seconds on the broadcast.
Oh, okay. Well, we're still working out the bugs of podcasting here in episode 120. We
should have had those figured out by now, I think.
Yeah. This is normally where we would ask Eric about bad beats.
I don't. Yeah, there was one this week, and he's not here to talk about it. So we'll move on. We'll go back to that when Eric gets on. But so the best and worst of Week 12, according to Football Outsiders. Quick reads. Patrick Mahomes was the best quarterback of the week. The only guy who I might have put ahead of him was Deshaun Watson. I mean, Deshaun Watson balled out on Thanksgiving. But I can certainly understand Patrick Mahomes getting it. Derek Carr was the worst. He went from first to worst. He was the best quarterback of the week in Week 11. The worst quarterback of Week 12.
What? Wait. What happened to the Raiders this week?
That is a very good question.
How do you lose to the Falcons?
And the thing is, I wasn't completely shocked by that loss. Like I put relatively few confidence points on the Raiders. I was shocked by the way that it happened. I was completely shocked by the way that it happened. Carr was abysmal. Their defense was non-existent. That was just an all-around awful performance for the Raiders. So Derek Carr first to worst on the quick reads. Running backs, Derrick Henry was the best rushing running back for the third week in a row. He was also the best total running back despite having a negative passing DYAR for the week. He was that good running the ball that he was able to absorb that with no drop in the rankings. Carlos Hyde and CJ Prosise were the worst running backs by total and rushing DYAR respectively.
Yeah, Carlos Hyde on.
He's with the Seahawks.
Yeah, he played in that Seahawks game, and to be fair, Carlos Hyde would have done better if that one rushing touchdown hadn't been called back by a hold. He had a rushing touchdown late in the game that was called back. That would have helped him.
Well, maybe the hold helped him.
Yes, that's fair.
Yeah.
Regardless,
you guys tried to convince me that Carlos Hyde was good.
No. There's no you guys about this. That was Corey.
When did I try to convince you that Carlos Hyde was good?
You
on this show, you're like, oh, Carlos Hyde, you should be worried about him taking carries from somebody. I'm like, no, he's just a guy.
From Duke Johnson, because he did. All the time.
Johnson's a third down running back.
Carlos Hyde, not a good player. Just not.
That's fine. He still took carries away. I was right.
Talking about a good player, Derrick Henry, like Corey mentioned, his lack of production in the passing game may have kept him, or may have not prevented him from being the top running back this week, but it has prevented him from being the top running back for the season, which is at this point somehow still Alvin Kamara, despite the fact that he's not allowed to catch the football anymore because Taysom Hill does not throw it to him.
And he's also not allowed to run the football anymore because they want to use Latavius Murray exclusively now.
It's a tough scene for you, Corey.
Yeah,
best and worst wide receiver tight end. Tyreek Hill was the best wide receiver of the week. No surprise there. He was absolutely amazing, especially in that first half. And then Christian Kirk was the worst of the bunch. So those are your quick reads for the week. We can jump back, I guess, to the bad beat for the Seahawks-Eagles game, Eric, now that you're back.
Yeah, sorry, I accidentally clicked out of the Skype thing, and then it took forever to load to get back in, which is just... I was like hitting my keyboard. I was like, "What the hell? Are you kidding me? I was just here." But anyway, so this is a tough one in a couple of ways. It gets you in many ways. The Seahawks were favored by 6.5 points, and they were up by 14 late. So you figure
they're gonna cover.
Backdoor covers happen regularly, but usually it's not due to 2-point conversions at unorthodox times. Now, we've discussed before on this show that going for 2 in that situation is mathematically the right move. But when you combine that fact that the touchdown was scored on a Hail Mary where the receiver didn't catch it and he batted it to Richard Rodgers, who was like laying on the turf, who somehow ended up catching the ball.
I still don't know how he caught that.
It was just an absurd sequence that, was significant to some, as Scott Van Pelt pointed out immediately after the game concluded. That was a tough one.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
So before we get to our game picks, just to mention college football, there's 2 ranked versus ranked games this week, Indiana and Wisconsin, and then BYU and Coastal Carolina. So, adjust your TV dial accordingly. So first game, Browns at Titans with good game, question mark. We have 5, 6, and 4 confidence points on the Titans. I do think this would be a good game. I just have a hard time picking the Browns because it's the Browns. like, maybe I'm just not completely feeling the Browns, although they're having a really good year and they're more than likely going to the playoffs for the first time since 2003 this season. But the Titans had a really impressive win, I think, against Indy last week.
Yeah, they did.
So I think that the Titans are just going to keep doing the one thing that they do is just hand the ball to Derrick Henry and play action pass with Tannehill to AJ Brown. They're tough to beat. The Browns have a pretty good defense, and the Titans' defense is awful. But Baker Mayfield can be shaky at times.
He hasn't thrown an interception in 4 weeks.
Yeah, but he's also overthrowing dudes right in front of him for touchdowns.
Yeah, he is.
We all saw that on Red Zone. That was heinous.
Yeah, he did. He just chucked the ball in the stands. So, that's how I feel about that. So I picked the Titans.
Yeah, I mean their performance against the Colts really impressed me. I had the Colts winning that game, and the game was not as close as even the scoreboard suggested. Titans really controlled that game from the outset, and if they can continue that momentum, then I think that they can handle the Browns relatively easily. This is still a good Titans team. They've been a little bit shaky over the past month. In particular, Tannehill has regressed a little bit, but he played a good game against Indy, against a really good defense, much better defense than the Browns have. And Derrick Henry is a beast.
Eric, you have to unmute yourself. This is a podcast.
Yes, I do have to unmute myself. I'm sorry that I didn't want you to hear me drinking my hot chocolate because you guys get so distracted by every little thing that happens.
It's the visual of the whipped cream on your face that distracts us, not you drinking the hot chocolate.
You guys need to maintain your poker faces a little better. That's pretty sloppy. But the Titans are clearly better.
Sloppy.
Yeah, I am.
With whipped cream on your face.
Yeah,
we're the sloppy ones.
Yeah, you're supposed to stay focused on the task at hand, and you're getting all worked up over what I'm doing. Focus on you. Worry about you. Anyway, the Titans are better than the Browns. I don't care what the records say. The Browns are kind of a fake good team. They're 8-3. Whereas the Titans actually have shown that they can beat good teams. The Browns really haven't. They beat the Colts earlier in the season, but they kind of felt like they fell into that win. But at the same time, the Browns have won games, and you got to give them credit for that. I mean, they're 8-3, so they're finding a way to do it. And the Titans are susceptible to losing to teams that are significantly worse than them. They lost to the Bengals just a few weeks ago. So I think that this game could be close. I worry about Baker Mayfield. I don't care that he hasn't thrown a pick. It seems more like that's because the team is going out of its way to prevent him from doing so. Feels like the offensive strategy is to not let Baker ruin it. And he has not. So, but I don't think that's going to work against the Titans, who are good enough to put up points. They're going to have to ask Baker to do more, and I'm not sure it's going to be enough.
Evan just ran into a crash on his computer, so I guess I'll take over for the time being until he comes back as we move on to the next game, which involves two AFC South teams, the Colts at the Texans, in what could be an interesting game. The Texans coming off of a really nice win against the Lions on Thanksgiving, but still a good team performance, but now without Will Fuller because he's being suspended for 6 games because he violated the NFL's PED rules. And we'll see what the fallout is of that. Will Fuller has been a really good player this year. He's really kind of come into his own. But they've got some other players on that team. They've got Brandon Cooks. They've got Kiki QT, the former Jaguar, who has some talent. So it should be an interesting game there. The Colts coming off of that. It's not a bad loss to the Titans, but I still think that they should have won that game. I think that they're the better team overall. They need to right the ship, and anytime you play against a division opponent, it can be tough.
Yeah, last week was kind of proof of what we've talked about all year, where the consensus is don't trust the Colts. I mean, we saw them boat race the Titans just 2 weeks prior to that game, and then they turn around and get worked right after that. We've seen them have games where they inexplicably lose based on what we know about them. And so, even though they're definitely better than the Texans, and now that the Texans are without Will Fuller, they still figure to be competitive with Deshaun Watson under center. He's still really good. And that could be enough to make this game interesting, but I still think the Colts are going to win. I just don't trust them enough to put a ton of confidence in them.
All right, can y'all hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. I'm back. So my computer is being old and terrible. So what?
We just finished talking about the Colts-Texans game. Any thoughts on that one?
The Colts-Texans game? I think the Colts roll. To be honest, I don't have any faith in the Texans because where's their team? They have Deshaun Watson, they have old J.J. Watt, and they have people who are just somewhere. Will Fuller suspended for the rest of the season. We're getting popped for PEDs. He was actually having a good year. He was staying healthy. Maybe that's a result of the PEDs. I don't know, but what? I don't see it from them, from the Texans. Frankly, I think the Colts are certainly the better team.
J.J. Watt did score a touchdown last week.
Oh right, he did. A pick six from Stafford.
Yeah. Yep. And he may be old, but he's coming off of 10-day rest, so maybe that helps a little bit.
Old guys need their rest.
So
I don't have the sheet in front of me.
Yeah, I'll take it. So moving on to
I don't know.
To the team that the Texans just beat, the Lions, playing at Chicago. We have to talk about this game because it's one of two lone wolf games we've got this week. Evan is taking the Lions with 2 confidence points. I've got the Bears with 2. Eric has got the Bears with 1. So, Evan, why in God's green earth are you taking the Lions?
Why in God's green earth are you taking the Bears? Have you seen their quarterback play?
It's a fair question.
Right? Yeah. What about that?
I'm taking the Bears primarily because they are at home.
Oh, okay. I mean, how many points I put on the Lions? 1 or 2?
Put 2.
2? I mean, that's just a couple points, but I think Stafford's a way better quarterback than Trubisky or Nick Foles or Tyler Bray or somebody. The Bears' defense is pretty good, but they don't typically score very many points on defense. You can't really count on that. So I think the Lions win in a squeaker, like a 16-12 type of thing.
Ew, 12?
Yeah.
What kind of score is that?
Exactly. What kind of score do you expect to get from the Bears offense?
Sounds like a horrible game.
I mean,
what are you expecting? There's a reason why you were lamenting the fact that we had to talk about this game.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going with the Bears because and this is going to sound really, really bad, but I saw just enough out of the Mitch Trubisky offense against the Packers to think they might be able to score some points against the Lions, and the Lions are a joke. They just fired their coach mercifully. Thank God Matt Patricia got fired. He should never have been hired in the first place. He was never all that good at his job.
Definitely pick the Lions now. Patricia's gone.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard mid-season to think that a new coaching staff is going to provide them any lift. Whereas I do think that the Bears have more talent overall, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think that Matt Stafford can take this dysfunctional team and beat the Bears unless the Bears offense is just horrible. And I think that they are one notch above horrible with Trubisky because Trubisky can actually get out and make some plays with his feet.
And he actually throws it to A-Rob.
Yeah, sure.
Foles hates Allen Robinson for
he throws it in the direction
reason.
of A-Rob. Whether it's accurate or not is up for
but
debate.
Allen Robinson is the kind of guy who can get the ball if you throw it in his direction. We saw that all last year. Terrible targets, but he was still catching
10 yards.
He was making some catches on some very overthrown balls last year, and he did it earlier this season too. So, I don't know.
Corey views everything through the prism of his fantasy football team.
Well, I don't have Allen Robinson anymore.
But you did, and you loved the guy. So
I still love the guy. I'm sad that
because of your connection to him through fantasy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Same with like Golden Tate, who you used to hate. Now you love him.
That's true.
Is he still in the league?
To be fair, though, I don't really look at it through the prism of my fantasy team exclusively. I look at it through the prism of fantasy football in general. Like I legitimately get attached to all 12 of our rosters each season.
That's weird.
You've been overdoing it on the roster baiting there. All 12? Goodness gracious.
That's part of what I like to do as a commissioner. It's why I do all the stat keeping stuff, and I go overkill on some of it.
I mean, what you do in the privacy of your own home is your business. So, that's up to you.
Tune in to an all-new fantasy football show one of these days.
Yes,
coming
plenty
soon.
of fantasy.
Coming soon. So next up is Giants at Seahawks, where I've got 13 points on Seattle. Evan's got 11 on them. Eric has relatively low confidence on the Seahawks with 8. So talk to us a little bit about why you went low confidence or low-ish confidence there.
I mean, of course, I still think they're going to win, but I just didn't like what I saw from them against the Eagles. That was a little bit like they won the game handily. The 6-point spread, as we pointed out, was a bad beat. It wasn't exactly that close, but this team wins with offense, and their offense has not looked that great lately, and they should have lit up the Eagles. They struggled at times. They failed to convert on fourth downs multiple times on fourth and short against the Eagles. That should not be a problem, and it was. So I just think there's some bumps with the Seahawks right now that make me wary of investing a whole lot of confidence points in them, even if they're playing, a Giants team that has no quarterback, because Daniel Jones isn't that good anyway. I realize he's definitely better than Colt McCoy, but the Giants as a whole have been playing better football, and so the Seahawks haven't. So it was not one of those games where I'm going to dump double-digit confidence just because the Seahawks right now are not exactly rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you on that. Where was that game played, though?
It was in Philadelphia.
Right. See, the Seahawks, for whatever reason, just they struggle a little bit when they play on the East Coast. They have for years. They get the benefit of playing at home next week against the Giants. Another issue there is that when you're going for it on fourth down and you don't get it, you're putting your defense in that much worse of a situation. I think the Seahawks need to cool it a little bit with going for it on fourth down so much. Kick the field goal when you're in field goal range. Punt and play the field position game. Your offense is good enough that you're going to get down the field again. You don't need to go for it on fourth down.
Okay, but they went for it on fourth down when they were inside the 40. Okay, there's no excuse to punt on 4th and 2 from the 39.
So kick the field
Corey,
goal.
There's no excuse to do it.
Kick the field goal.
That's not how you do.
So kick
that's
the
a
field
long
goal.
field goal. It's a long field goal. They don't get the kicker. So go for it on fourth down.
I don't know. I don't love the decision. I hear what you're saying as far as not punting, but kick the field goal. That's my take.
So what you're saying is that if you were a coach, you would be lighting up the cowardly punts thing that I follow on Twitter, and we'd be seeing a whole lot of tweets from a Corey coach team.
Oh no, I probably wouldn't punt there. What happened to Evan? Evan disappeared again.
Yeah, he disappeared.
Yeah,
he's still here. He just.
I was attempting to look at the sheet.
Gotcha.
We're talking Giants and Seahawks. I think the Seahawks roll. Their offense is really good. Their defense is abysmal. But the Giants are abysmal in all phases of the game. So this is in Seattle. So I think the Seahawks roll. I do kind of worry though. The Seahawks they
don't play normal
inferior
games.
Teams hang around.
They don't play normal games.
Yeah. It's always something weird's gonna happen. Just a failed 2-point conversion that gets intercepted. for 2 points the other way. Something like that is going to happen every week with this Seahawks team. So that's why I docked them a couple confidence points, just because the Seahawks are weird.
Really good game coming up this week is the Rams and the Cardinals. The Cardinals are still in play for the NFC West, although the Rams are kind of taking, moving up a little bit and potentially taking control if the Seahawks don't get it together. We all have the Rams with 3 confidence points to win on the road against Arizona. But that should be a really fun game. For me, it was just a gut feeling. I've really been feeling the Cardinals this season. I pick them when I can. Kyler Murray has played very well this year. I like their offense. Their defense has been kind of eh. The Rams, though, their offense has been good and their defense has been pretty solid. And if anything, their defense has gotten better over the last few weeks. So I'm interested to hear your guys' take on this game, just seeing as we all have the same confidence in the Rams.
Well, I put 3 because you guys put 3. Playing a little defense.
All right, then I want to hear from Eric.
Why are you playing defense? You're in last place. I should be playing defense.
Yeah, you should be
I'm
playing
playing defense because when I try to play offense, I fall further behind.
Oh, well, maybe you should just pick with your gut. Just don't even worry about what we're doing.
That's what I've been doing, and my gut seems to, need a little Pepto-Bismol.
Okay,
so,
fair enough. Okay, so I feel like sometimes the Rams, we get caught up in the game by game with them because they've been a little inconsistent. They got housed by the Dolphins was that a month ago? They got boat raced by the 49ers the first time they played them, and then they lost to them again when they were even more banged up, the 49ers, that is, last week. So, but it just seems like for whatever reason, the 49ers seem to have Sean McVay's number. They seem to be able to beat them. The Cardinals don't seem to have that same level of ability to topple the Rams. And the Cardinals are not looking that great lately themselves. Corey looks pretty frozen there, so I hope he's still with us.
He looks unfrozen to me.
Okay, fair enough. So the Cardinals are 6-5. They could easily be 5-6 if it wasn't for that phenomenal Hail Mary play. So that leaves me a little concerned that the Cardinals are trending in the wrong direction. They had a chance to really take control of the division on that Thursday night game against the Seahawks, and they had a pretty underwhelming performance, especially given how bad the Seattle's defense is. And they went out and lost that game. And it wasn't because they got just shredded by Russell Wilson, which is a perfectly acceptable reason to lose. It was because their offense was contained, and their offense has been contained a lot lately, and that worries me. I've got real concerns about how well their offense is playing right now, and the Rams' defense is very good. So I just see the Rams' defense giving them fits, and that could end up being the deciding factor in this game, so I went with the Rams.
I mean, that's the gist of how I feel, too. I don't... the Cardinals, they just seem to be having problems. Like, they're just not humming on offense like they used to be. But then the Rams figure out how to lose to inferior teams sometimes. Like, they lost to the 49ers last week. Business losing to the 49ers. So, it's kind of a versus situation.
Yeah, it's when you got Cliff Kingsbury, what do you expect?
Mm-hmm. Apparently, he's had some coaching gaffes.
Yeah, he has.
The past few weeks.
The Cardinals have been playing pretty well this year, but he's made enough boneheaded decisions in game that I'm willing to not give him a whole lot of credit for that.
I want Corey to watch the tape on every Cardinals game and just do like a running diary of all the times that Cliff Kingsbury screws up a situation, and it's just going to be he's going to nitpick the hell out of him because he hates him, and it's going to be great.
That might actually be a fun project for the off season. I might think about doing that this off season.
You've got Game Pass. You've got Game Pass, right?
Yeah, I've got Game Pass, so I can watch all the games. I'll watch the tape.
Yeah, grind tape. With Hugh Jackson.
Watch it with Hugh Jackson. The Patriots are playing in Los Angeles against the Chargers this week. Evan is going lone wolf, taking the Patriots with 1 confidence point. I've got the Chargers with 1. Eric's got the Chargers with 2. So, Evan, why New England?
I'm 100% certain that the Chargers are the better team in this matchup. Like the Patriots' offense isn't very good. Their defense isn't nearly as good as it was last year. And that's how I feel about that. But the Chargers, they just find ways to lose every week. I was picking them earlier in the season, and they would have some heartbreaking, mind-boggling catastrophe in the final seconds to figure out how to lose the game. So, it's just what the Chargers are at this point. They're snake bitten to the 10,000th power. Like they should win, but they just won't. Something's gonna happen. They just won't win. They don't win ever. That's the Chargers. Can't trust them.
So when I was looking at this game, just for fun, I went and looked at the DVOA on Football Outsiders. I mean, I tend to look just to see where teams are anyway. But the thing that stuck out to me about this game, when you look at the Chargers and the Patriots, is that the Chargers have a much better offensive DVOA than the Patriots. They're ranked 12th compared to the Patriots, who are ranked 21st. Okay. They have a better defensive DVOA. They rank 23rd, but the Patriots rank 31st. But their overall DVOA is a little more than 4% lower than the Patriots. And the reason for that is because the Chargers' special teams has been so bad. So the Chargers rank 32nd in special teams DVOA at minus 12.7%.
Out of 32 teams.
Out of 32 teams. The next worst is 5% better than them. And that's a pretty substantial difference. It's like twice as good almost. So that's how bad their special teams is, and that's the only thing that gives me pause. And normally I'd be like, special teams is such a small part of the game. It's really not that big a deal. It has been a big deal for the Chargers because their special teams has specifically lost them multiple games this season alone. And this is a running issue for the Chargers. This is not a 2020 unique problem. Special teams has been a catastrophic failure for the Chargers for years.
Yeah, the perceived quality of these teams versus their actual records are probably the biggest. They probably feature the biggest gap of any teams in the league in opposite directions. The Patriots are a horrible football team, but they're somehow 5-6, and the Chargers look like a pretty good team, and they're 2-9 or 3-9.
I think they won 3 games.
Okay, so they've won 3 games. So it doesn't make any sense except for when you boil it down to something that a lot of people ignore, which is special teams. I mean, when you're that consistently bad, that they're practically an outlier. If you were to graph these teams by their special teams DVOA, they'd be out so far on an island you'd have to throw the data point out. That's going to have consequences because special teams is probably 20% of games, and if you are way worse than everybody else in that, that's enough to move the needle 3 or 4 points per game. And that's oftentimes the difference between a win and a loss. And that's what we've seen with the Chargers this year. So I do think that could potentially rear its head again. I think the coaching mismatch could rear its head. That's why I don't have a whole lot of confidence in the Chargers. But ultimately, I don't believe in New England at all. I think that all of their wins outside of maybe the one time they beat the Raiders pre-Cam Newton getting COVID has been pretty fraudulent. I mean, they haven't done anything to compel me to think that they're a good football team. So I've got to roll with the team that I think is better.
I mean, I agree. I think the Chargers are better. I just think they screw up all the time.
So the next game we've got is the Sunday night game, Broncos at Chiefs. Not a whole lot to talk about here. All of us have max confidence in the Chiefs, 15 points.
I think what is worth talking about is that Steve Kornacki's going to be on on Football Night in America, breaking down the playoff picture before this game. So that's could
probably
be interesting to watch.
Yeah, that's probably the most interesting thing.
Is he going to have a nice touch board with it and everything, or everything?
He's going to be standing at the screen. Yes.
Good for him.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Monday, we've got a doubleheader starting with a 5 p.m. game between the football team and Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. I've got 11 points on the Steelers. Evan and Eric both have 12. So I don't know. I guess I just think that the football team is going to win this game.
I mean, yeah, that's not going to happen. This is the Evans Parents Bowl. My dad's a Steelers fan and my mom's a Washington fan. So, yeah, that's going to happen.
I think the football team has a better chance of beating the Steelers than the Ravens did this past week, but it's still not a very good chance. And honestly, that's the only reason. That's probably why I have very slightly less confidence than these two, is because I see that and I think, well, the Ravens actually, they got to within a score. If they had converted an onside kick, you don't know what could happen. Something could have happened there.
If Luke Wilson could catch the ball.
Or if Luke Wilson could catch the ball. So I do give the football team an outside chance, but the Steelers are a better defense than any that the football team has faced, or any that any team has faced, except for those who have already played the Steelers. And the Steelers' offense, I think, has enough different weapons that it's going to wear down the Washington's defense. You have to take into consideration the fact that Ben Roethlisberger, I mean, they talked about this ad nauseum yesterday. Ben Roethlisberger has the quickest release in the NFL this year, a complete 180 from his entire career up to this point. And Washington is best when they can get pressure at the quarterback. That's what allows their secondary to be adequate in coverage. That's going to be really difficult with a guy who's getting the ball out of his hands within 2.5 seconds every play.
Yeah, I don't give the team much of a chance to win this one. I don't think they've beaten the Steelers since, 1992? It's been an eternity. I realized that the Steelers didn't look that great against the Ravens on yesterday, which again is just weird. But we also know that the Ravens and Steelers play each other, and it doesn't matter who the hell's on the teams. It's just going to be a weird defensive struggle type of game. And we've seen times where Charlie Batch went out there and beat the Ravens, much to Evan's chagrin, I'm sure.
The Ravens lost the game to Dennis Dixon.
Exactly. This is just what those teams do. It's a war on the field no matter who is lining up.
The Steelers lost the game to Ryan Mallett. That happened.
Yeah. So this is a thing that happens when these teams play. Unfortunately, Washington does not have that type of moxie when facing off against the Steelers. Every time, and it hasn't happened super frequently since I started watching football regularly because different conferences, but I don't recall a single time where the team has been anything but embarrassed when they played the Steelers. So
their last 5 games, they haven't scored more than 2 touchdowns. In 3 of those games, they didn't even score double digits.
Exactly. So, and there was that one game, I think in 2008, when the team looked pretty good for the first half of the year, and then they had to play the Steelers in primetime, and all the stands at FedEx Field were just a bunch of Yinzers waving their terrible towels.
I remember that game. That was with Jason Campbell. And we were like, we were like 6-2 or something at the time.
Yeah, we started 6-2, and we just got handled by the Steelers, who ended up winning the Super Bowl. So
yeah, but everything for us just went downhill from there.
Yeah, that was the inevitable. That was the mirage of Jim Zorn. Jim Zorn was going to be Coach of the Year mid-season, and he was promptly fired a year and a half later.
The mirage of Jim Zorn. If I could write that down, I would. So make a mental note of that one. Yeah, Steelers roll. It's an easy one.
So next up is the Monday Night Football game. The late game will be the Bills at the 49ers. Do we know where that game is going to actually take place yet?
They're playing in Arizona.
They are playing in Arizona? Okay. So that'll be interesting. But
the Bills at the 49ers at the Cardinals.
Right. We've all got the Bills. Eric and I have 4 points. Evan's got 6 points. 49ers coming off of that win against the Rams that we've already talked a little bit about, how they had no business winning that game. But the 49ers defense is a pretty decent unit. Definitely got to give them a little bit of respect, even with some of the injuries they've been dealing with. They got Richard Sherman back this past week, and he made a huge difference. He got an interception in the game. Granted, it was a terribly thrown ball by Jared Goff that gave him the opportunity. It was a huge overthrow, or maybe it was an underthrow. He threw it in between two receivers, essentially, and Richard Sherman was just there. But, the offense has a lot of trouble. The Bills, I still think the jury's still a little bit out on them. Their offense tends to be a little bit inconsistent from week to week, and their defense has been underwhelming this season compared to what I expected based on what they did last season and the additions they made during the offseason. But I still think the Bills should win this game.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Bills should win. I think they're the better team. The 49ers are just so injured. Probably need to be a little bit more careful with my confidence points. Because the 49ers show that they can beat good teams. They show that they're well coached. And the Bills can be a little shaky sometimes and hard to trust. But I think they should win. I think Josh Allen. Oh boy, trust in Josh Allen. He should play well. I mean, the last time he played in that stadium, he threw the game-winning touchdown until it wasn't the game-winning touchdown anymore. So, I like the Bills.
Yeah, anytime you say the phrase, I think Josh Allen, and you're relying on it to be something that helps you win, it's always time to kind of pull back and maybe rethink.
Yeah.
Because you never really know. You never really know what he's going to do. But the Bills are healthier. The Bills' defense is back. Like the last 6 weeks, they've looked like the Bills' defense we expected to see coming into the year. I think that they went from Aaron Schatz posted it on Twitter. He said first 6 weeks of the season, they were at like a positive 12.7 DVOA defensively. The last 6 weeks, they've been the exact inverse of that, which is obviously very good. Yeah. So their defense has kind of gotten together as Josh Allen's performance has regressed back to the mean, which is ultimately leaves them where we thought they would be this year, which is still a good team. It's just more in line of what conventional thinking had them being in August, which doesn't really matter because the 49ers are far from that given all the injuries they have. So I still expect the Bills to be able to win this game. I give a lot of respect for what Kyle Shanahan has done with that team. He's got them still in the hunt somehow, despite the fact that they play in the best division in football and they basically don't have a team to go out there and yet they're still competing. So credit to them. I think that they will compete in this game, but I just think that ultimately the NFL season we know is a war of attrition, and unfortunately the 49ers lost that war back in September.
Week 1.
Yep.
So we are recording/broadcasting live right now on Thursday evening because the Ravens played Wednesday. They were supposed to play tonight against the Dallas Cowboys at home. That game has been moved to Tuesday at 8:05 p.m., so we will get yet another edition of Tuesday football this season. I've got the Ravens with 9 confidence points. Evan's got the Ravens with 8. Eric's got the Ravens with 7. So why are we all a little bit lower on the confidence for this game?
We don't know who's going to be playing for the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean
that's why.
It's pretty much what it boils down to.
It could be anybody.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson tested positive for COVID, and we don't know how long that's going to keep him out. He could recover relatively quickly. He could very easily miss this game. The Ravens do figure to get J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram back for that game. I think they'd been activated before the Steelers game, but not in time for them to actually play.
Yeah, they were off the list.
They came off the COVID list, but they were not active for the game. And you figure a few other players will probably come off that list too. But the big question is Lamar Jackson, because if he's not there, then that gives the Cowboys a legitimate chance to win this game. I still think the Ravens would win, but it gets a little bit dicier at that point.
Absolutely. And this better be the payoff of the Madden curse. This better be it. Right? I told y'all something was going to happen to him, and it seems so obvious now that he was going to get coronavirus because everybody's getting coronavirus here in the United States. So, it's, oh, goodness, this team. They're going to fight hard. I know that. But, how much success that's going to lead to remains to be seen because we don't know who's playing. A lot can change between now and then in 5 days.
I think it speaks to what we think about the Cowboys, where we're saying we don't know who the hell's going to play for the Ravens, but we're pretty damn sure they're still going to win the football game. So
that's true.
I don't care who suits up at this point. The Ravens haven't played great, but they're still way better than Dallas. We saw the Ravens compete pretty hard yesterday, despite some pretty impossible circumstances against a really good team. Now they're going up against an awful team that is just a rudderless ship at this point. They had 1 week where they resembled a competent football outfit against the Vikings, and then on Thanksgiving was right back to the dumpster, and I don't expect them to climb out of it against Baltimore.
They got waxed at home on national TV in the most watched game this season by a team with no name. How's that work?
2020, baby.
Shout out to James Daly. He won our fan contest for week 12 with 116 confidence points in our games.
Geez.
He went 14-2. The three of us went 12-4. So he had a great week. He's now up to 997 points total on the season, which leads our fan leaderboard as he jumps up ahead of Sean Kennedy.
I think we need to stop the count.
He is 1 point behind me. I'm at 998, and Eric is our first to 1,000. He's got 1,006 points. So, Eric, watch out. I'm breathing down your neck. Only down by 8 now.
Did you say something? I couldn't hear you from all the way up here.
I'm claiming fraud. Rampant fraud throughout the confidence points.
Our Week 13 picks are up on the website. We, of course, don't talk about every single game because our podcasts run long enough as it is. Really don't need to hear us rambling for another 2 hours. But you can go on to our blog, thesportsballers.blogspot.com. You can see all of our Week 13 picks, the confidence points we've assigned them, see the current standings of our top 3 on the fan leaderboard. Obviously, at this point, it's too late to catch up in the overall fan standings, but
might not be the way I'm picking.
If you would like to send picks in for the week, you can send confidence picks into the sportsballers@gmail.com, and if you end up winning the week, you'll still get a shout out on the blog. So it's not too late to do that. Real quick, I just went over to footballoutsiders.com, and I happened to notice they've got coach rankings on there, and I haven't ever noticed those before. So they have Cliff Kingsbury as the number 9 coach. He's number 20 in fourth down situations, but he's number 9 in overall. So I think I'm definitely going to be looking into that this offseason because I take issue with that.
Who are the top 5?
Reed, LaFleur, Reich, Tomlin, and Harbaugh, followed by Shanahan.
Oh, okay.
So those are good coaches. So maybe your perception is just off base then, Corey, because it sounds like it's a pretty credible list.
No, I'm
Where's
right.
Anthony Lynn on the list?
Anthony Lynn is now number 24.
Oh, that's better than I thought.
He's ahead of Belichick. Belichick is 25.
Really?
So much for your argument that this is a good list, Eric.
Belichick hasn't had that good of a year, let's be real.
I think he has because they have nobody there, and he's managed to, cobble together 5 wins from nothing. I mean, they have a Jets-ishly bad roster in New England this season, and the fact that they've won games, I think, speaks to how good of a coach Belichick's been.
Well, that's it for
who's
our
last.
That's it for our game picks.
Mm-hmm. Who's last on that coach's list?
Before
we get out of here.
Oh, it was Matt Patricia.
Oh,
See,
go.
List makes sense, baby. It's all there.
Yeah, the weird thing is that the combination. So for they're really doing it like by teams. So they've combined like O'Brien and Crennel are combined, and then Quinn and Morris are combined, and the Quinn Morris combination is ranked 12th.
Mm-hmm. So that should tell you something, but I don't know what.
Yeah, I don't know either. O'Brien Crennel is 23rd.
Okay. That's an interesting list. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Because I would like to think I could do better than some of these guys, when in reality, there's not a chance.
Well, I'm guessing Evan still doesn't have the thing up, so I'll go ahead and close us out this week.
Yeah, my computer's still got the blue screen frown face. I don't know. It might be time to send it to the a farm upstate, if you will.
If you don't already, make sure that you subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast service, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Amazon Podcasts. We're glad to have been able to do this show live on our Facebook page. Make sure you like that so that you can keep up with when we do this. If we didn't announce this today because we didn't want to run into some technical issue and then not be able to do it and disappoint the 3 people who listen, as Evan likes to say.
Yes, the quarter dozen.
But this is something that we may try and do in the future. If you followed us, then you got an alert that we were live. If you don't follow us, then you didn't get that. So make sure you follow our Facebook page. You like our Facebook page so that you can get alerted when we do go live. At some point in the future, we may be doing more than one podcast a week. We'll have to see what happens with our plans going forward. But you can also follow us on Twitter at Sportsballers18. We post a lot of stuff on there, links to our blog stuff, and anything else, links to our show. You can follow me on Twitter at Corey Puffett. You can follow Eric at Quagmire67, and you can follow Evan at Evan_Ash13. As I said before, you can email us, thesportsballers@gmail.com, with weekly game picks, mailbag questions, what have you. And yeah, so one shout out I have is Jerry and Grant, my old classmate at DeMath, the class of 2010. He got signed to the Houston Rockets. So congratulations to him. Really happy to see him get another opportunity to play in the NBA. He's been a pretty decent role player in the NBA. I think he's played pretty well, so I'm glad to see that he's sticking around.
I would like to remind everybody to please wear a mask and wash your hands, and of course bathe. It's important, and just be kind to people. It's going to be a rough winter, obviously, and tell the people you love that you love them.
All good advice. Eric, any shout outs for you?
Shout out to my parents for tuning in. Appreciate the feedback that we got in the comments. Some of them were. I could tell that it was an inexperienced individual on the iPad typing because there was some strange typos coming through, but nevertheless, we appreciate the feedback and the tuning in.
Yes, we do. So if you'd like to listen to more live shows in the future, be sure to like us on Facebook. Let us know that you listen, that you like it, that you want to be able to tune in live. Otherwise, make sure that you drop us some feedback on your podcast service. If you're on Apple Podcasts, we do love getting feedback via ratings and reviews. So with all of that said, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 120 of the Sportsballers podcast. Evan hosted most of the show. I took over a little bit, but I'm Corey Puffett here with Evan and Eric as always, and we'll be back with you again next week with another episode of the Sportsballers podcast.